Finally, the CCSA announced it will allow for alcohol to be sold and consumed in restaurants, though just in Phuket. Meanwhile, the Public Health Ministry says new infections should fall to around 5,000 a day by the end of October, and Thailand's Education Ministry has admitted that it has posted a photoshopped picture. Details on these stories and many more are coming right up. Welcome to the Thaiger channel, and you're watching Thailand News Today. We bring you the latest updates on headlines in Thailand. Now, we first like to give a shout out to Thomas Horak for supporting the channel by becoming a Thaiger member. Now, you can support the channel and gain membership perks as well by hitting that join button. And now, on to the news. The CCSA has given initial approval to allow for the selling and consumption of alcohol in Phuket restaurants starting October 1st, a decision that should drastically help the Phuket sandbox and stimulate the economy. According to the governor of Phuket, the Phuket Communicable Disease Committee held a meeting with the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration to discuss all the guidelines before issuing the final order to go into effect in Phuket on October the 1st. Thailand has had a national ban on alcohol consumption in groups and in establishments for months, and we at the Thaiger have reported on numerous crackdowns on violators. As of now, the new announcement will only apply to Phuket. The order, however, does not reopen nightlife venues such as bars and nightclubs and only applies to both open-air and air-conditioned restaurants as long as health and safety measures are observed. In order to sell alcohol, every restaurant employee needs to be fully vaccinated and be tested weekly for COVID-19. And you're not going to like this one, but customers also need to be fully vaccinated, and restaurants are required to check proof of vaccination and an ID before allowing admission. The order is more restrictive for open air-conditioned restaurants, allowing them to open with tables spaced 1 meter apart and only 4 to 6 people per table. They would be allowed to operate at 50% capacity. Open-air dining, on the other hand, will be allowed to open at 75% capacity. The order would even allow live music, but would be limited to solo artists, duos, and trios, so no Beatles look-alike bands. The performance area also needs to be 2 meters away from the tables, so no mosh pits either. The artists will be required to wear a mask or face shield except for the singer. Artists would not be able to mix and socialize with customers. Anytime a staff member is infected with COVID, the restaurant must be closed for at least 1 week, while any customer infection that was uncovered will require the business to close for 3 days. These closure restrictions were said to be subject to change. Thailand's Longstay tourist visa has been extended for another year. The scheme, which was first approved last October and initially set to end tomorrow, will now end on September the 30th of next year. The Special Tourist Visa Scheme, or STV, was launched last year to draw in travelers from overseas to revive the crippled tourism industry. The visa allows for a 90-day stay and can be extended twice, which means you can stay in Thailand for up to 9 months. The visa scheme was one of the government's first attempts to draw in foreign visitors and boost the economy. However, some consider the effort to be a major failure because of the low number of visitors entering under the program and that many were turned off by the mandatory 14-day quarantine. Over the past year, just over 5,600 people traveled to Thailand under the Longstay tourist visa. And although the visa allows for an extended stay of up to 9 months, the average stay for holders of the visa was just around 90 days. Thai Airways says it will start selling seats on flights to highly vaccinated destinations starting October the 1st. This means flights to the UK, France, and Germany, as well as places like Japan and Australia. The decision was made after several destinations reported vaccination rates of around 70%. According to the airline spokesperson, the carrier also expects to add flights to China next year. He says Thai Airways' finances have improved following the sale of some assets and offloading investments. According to a report, Thai Airways is working to reduce up to 53 billion bahts in investment costs by the end of 2022. To date, it has saved 44 billion, largely due to cost-cutting measures, which includes cutting the workforce by 48% to around 15,000 employees. The carrier is also selling 42 of its 100-strong fleet, with all sales expected to be complete by the end of the year. Once in a while, COVID numbers that you want to hear. The Public Health Ministry says new infections should fall to around 5,000 a day by the end of October. Dr. Kietipoom Wongcharit from the Health Ministry says that the expected drop in new infections should lead to a significant decline in the number of patients experiencing severe symptoms and those who need hospitalization in intensive care units. He credits restrictions in dark red provinces for the improving situation, coupled with an acceleration of the vaccination rate, which he says should be on par with European countries from next month onwards. He added to this optimism that the risk of a large cluster of new infections and the emergence of a new variant are both still possible, but the chances are on the low side. Yesterday, Thailand reported 9,489 new infections, and that was the first time in several weeks that the figure has dropped below 10,000. Tourism operators in Phuket are calling for the certificate of entry process to be simplified, saying that it is key to bringing back more international travelers. Phumkit Raktaingam from the Phuket Tourism Association says those making the decisions need to understand how tourists plan their holidays and should therefore simplify entry procedures. He points out that the current requirement for tourists to have at least $100,000 in COVID insurance coverage is unnecessary, given that most companies will not reimburse patients with no symptoms, and most infected sandbox tourists have been asymptomatic. Phumkit would also like to see an end to the policy of moving tourists to state quarantine if they were unfortunate enough to have been a passenger on the same flight as an infected person. He says none of the passengers that were on the same flight as the infected person has ever tested positive during the 3 months of the Sandbox program. Tourism operators are hopeful that the shorter quarantine period, which comes into effect on Friday, will help increase demand, though I'm not sure the Thaiger comment section would agree. Sandbox tourists participating in the 7+7 extension scheme are now only required to spend 4 days in Phuket before traveling to places like Phang Nga, Krabi, or Koh Samui. Phumkit added that bookings being made for after mid-October hit an all-time high of 12,000 nights amid speculation that quarantine was about to be reduced. Since the launch of the Sandbox, Phuket has welcomed around 37,500 international visitors, far short of the initial target of 100,000 in the first 3 months. Thai officials are hoping to attract Indian tourists into the country by capitalizing on the upcoming Hindu festival of lights, also known as Diwali. The Bangkok Post notes that this expectation is also seen as a way of compensating for a lack of Chinese tourists. Diwali will begin in early November, which coincides with the planned waiver of quarantine for vaccinated tourists on November the 1st. The vice president of the Thai Tourism Council said that Indian visitors could spend between 27,000 to 76,000 baht per trip to Thailand, and that destination weddings are even more lucrative as they can rake in between 10 to 120 million baht in revenue for hotels and the service industry. She noted that although it will be difficult to match the number of visitors and revenue generated by Chinese travelers, Indian tourists can help support Thailand's tourism industry during this time. 3 million people have lost their jobs tied to the tourism sector because of the pandemic, and the Thai Tourism Council has had to adjust the estimated number of tourists this year from 500,000 travelers down to just 280,000. The Thai government has issued a time frame for employees to register undocumented migrant workers so that they can obtain work permits. The Labor Ministry says the measure applies to migrant workers from Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos and is being introduced to mitigate the risk of further COVID-19 outbreaks. Officials from the Department of Employment will carry out checks at factories, construction sites, and other workplaces over a 30-day period in order to offer health guidance to business owners and migrant workers. During this time, officials will document the workers, and their bosses must apply for work permits and other relevant documents. Those who have received a work permit must also register for health insurance. Thailand's Education Ministry has released a formal apology for posting false information after it published an edited photo of the Deputy Education Minister standing in floodwater. Flood across Thailand has wreaked havoc in 30 provinces, causing over 70,000 homes to be damaged and resulting in 6 confirmed deaths, with 2 reports of missing people. The photo was posted yesterday showing the Deputy Education Minister knee-deep in floodwater, with a caption stating that she visited the areas that have been flooded as a result of Tropical Storm Dianmu. However, people who saw the posts were quick to comment that the image looked fake, as it looked like it was done by a $5 Fiverr gig. One user said that the photo was actually one she took in 2020 and posted the original photo as proof. The Education Ministry quickly deleted the manipulated photo and then posted on Facebook that they were not involved in its creation, blaming it instead on the Public Relations Administration. No individual was publicly named for the photo, nor was any action or punishment undertaken as a result of the incident. The official statement read, "Administrators of the official Facebook page of the Education Ministry would like to apologize for the incident and would accept all suggestions and comments in order to improve our duty and operation." I'm sure some from the Thaiger comment section would gladly provide some feedback. And that's all for the news today, but do check out the videos that just popped up to continue watching content from the Thaiger channel. Thailand News Today will be back tomorrow with more headlines. Meanwhile, you're now up to date on the Thaiger.